So motivation. Some of you, I hope, will be motivated to do something to improve accessibility, the accessibility of your systems, your sites, your products, your services. And one of my sort of open questions for you is, does the type of motivation or the source of motivation matter? So are you doing it because you're frightened of legal situations? You're now working for BMI Baby or whoever's bought them now, probably BA or something. So is it fear that drives you? Is it that you actually realize that people like Gary are nice people? Well, sometimes a nice guy. So anyhow, so people like Gary are nice people, and so you actually want to help your friend rather than just helping this abstract community of people who have disabilities. Is that the motivating factor? Is it fear of your dotage or helping your parents or whatever it is? So sometimes I think the motivation matters a little bit in terms of how we continue our work. So if we do just enough to avoid the legal problem, stepped aside and it went past me, then I might say, phew, that's enough accessibility problems done for this year. I'll get on with running the business, versus I actually want to make a positive difference, or I want to make money out of this. And most of you are involved in organizations that need to make money to survive. Is that correct? So talking to Steve about Remploy, and I happen to have a friend who works at Remploy, and he told me that Remploy is actually cutting down and closing a number of the locations because it's too expensive to run. So Remploy care about money. Charities care about money. Gary works for the RNAB, they care about money. Without income, they don't pay his salary, and Gary probably doesn't turn up at work. Gary, would you turn up for work for free? No. So even Gary wouldn't turn up for work for free at the RNAB. So we need money in this. So if we were able to see real money coming in from improving accessibility in the services, perhaps it would also motivate us. And I personally believe there is a great opportunity here. It's one of the reasons I work in this field. Right, what can I do? This is your question to yourselves. So how many of you ever wanted to have superpowers? Be Superman? Fly through, stop the speeding train, catch the burning aeroplane and land it down and just accept politely the applause from the audience, the 100,000 people who saw you do it in the center of New York. So personally, I've dreamed about having superpowers to be able to fix all the web technologies and get the companies to actually pay attention and do whatever it is I think is the right thing to do. But in practice, most of us have fairly limited superpowers. So what can we actually do? Well, we can do direct action. So we can do something, whatever something is. Now, one of the things I've been involved in is I've written some open source software that enables you to test your websites. It's all free, you can download it, you can modify it, do what the heck you want with it, pretty much. And it'll test for static problems, so the WCAG problems, dynamic problems that Richard mentioned, an example where I compare the equivalent paths of navigating with a keyboard and navigating with a mouse. Not to say the two have to be the same, but if it's 100 steps by keyboard and 2 clicks with a mouse, they don't personally seem quite right. They don't seem quite equivalent. So perhaps we could improve the keyboard navigation by putting shortcodes in or things like that. So we can do something direct. We can help someone. It may be that you're not in a position to solve the technical problems personally, but you're a manager of a team, and perhaps one of your team would like to learn this, and you give them a bit of time and a bit of help to get them up and running. It may be you have influence. So you're able to go to, I don't know, the project manager and say, how about we do this in the next quarter? Let's fit a little bit of time to cleaning up our accessibility, writing a new product that might just get us some praise in the press, if nothing else, in terms of this area. And I'll encourage you, if you're in the testing communities, to use test automation to help find the potential problems, bearing in mind that some of the problems that the tools find, you'll either want to ignore or there'll be false positives. So just get used to that and say, is using a tool sufficiently helpful for me to cope with all the extra dross that this tool generates? And from the work that I've done in this area, my open source project, when I worked in the large companies, what I found is 100% of my bugs got fixed. Now, if you've been involved in testing, to me, if someone fixes my bug, it's a reasonable indication they cared enough about it to do something about it, versus them leaving it as do not fix, or this is really important for us, priority 4. And again, if you've been involved in testing, priority 4 is the kiss of death. That will outlive your life and death on the project. One of the reasons I'm here is to, I'll use the term radiate my influence. So I'm speaking to about 40 of you. They'll be recorded. Perhaps some people will watch this later on. And I can't do everything by myself. I've tried and I've failed. And every week I go on, I wish I'd done more to help improve accessibility. But with your help and the help of the people that you influence, perhaps we have a real opportunity to improve things. And I'll come back to an offer that I'm going to make to all of you later on. Time matching. So you may be familiar with your companies. Some of you have pension plans, don't you? And the companies may just put lots of money in for free. But most companies these days say, if you put in 2%, we'll match it with 2%. Or they have some sort of ratio like that. Are you familiar with this model? So how about having a time matching system? So let's imagine you go to your boss and say, can I have 1% of work time to work purely on improving accessibility? 1% of work time per year is about 2.4 days. So 48 weeks, working weeks, 5 weeks holiday, 5 working days. We're looking at 240 days, so 1% of that is 2.4 days. 120 days of the year is your time. That's weekends, it's holidays. So if you're willing to give 1% of your time, that's just over a day, and the company gives 1% of the work time, that's 3.6 days to work on this area. So if it actually matters to you, is that enough of an investment to improve things? And if it is, perhaps the model will work for you. And the company, your bosses, whoever's your paymaster general, will say, well, you're putting some effort into this, so we'll match you. So maybe worth a try for you. Have any of you actually stood in a river? A big, fast-flowing river? It's kind of fun, isn't it? Especially when it's hot and sunny as it was this weekend, 28 degrees around where I live. So when the water's up to your knees, no big deal, is it? It feels nice and cool. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I like being in the water. It gets up to your waist, and you're starting to feel the river pull a little bit now, but you're strong young people, so you can cope with this. But as you probably know, if you slip, step on a slippy stone or something, and you start to fall a little bit, suddenly the water takes over. You go in above waist deep, up to chest deep, the water can win, and sadly people die from this. So in the same sort of thing, I'm going to encourage you in terms of accessibility, don't try and solve the world's problems. It's unlikely to succeed. Find something where you're going to be in your depth of comfort, but find someone to help you to improve your abilities and your competencies so that you can actually be more effective in this area. So I'd be all for you going back to your companies, your organizations, and running a little web accessibility check. There's plenty of tools. I write one of them, but there's plenty of other ones that run in your browser. And just check your website and file 3 or 4 bugs and see what happens. How much of your time did it cost you? An hour, 2 hours? Maybe your company files them all P4s. Well, that's a clue at least. Then go and find why they file it as P4 and see if you can encourage people to understand the differences. How many of you have worked with British standards? Familiar with British standards and BSI? So one of the nice standards, I don't think very much of standards generally, but one of the nice ones is 8878. This is the accessibility standard. And it looks at accessibility beyond the purely, is it accessible? So let me give you an example of a website that is accessible. Take a large, we'll pick a news site. And let's say that, I'll pick on Gary. So Gary wants to read a news article, and he has to hit the tab key 173 times to get to the news article so he can open it and read it. Is it accessible? Technically, it's accessible. He's able to reach it. He can access it. He can reach it. Is it practically accessible? Probably not. So is it usable for Gary? No, it's 173 keystrokes versus a mouse click. Then the third measure, which is the one I really like, is it enjoyable for Gary? Would Gary voluntarily go back to this site and read another news article? So if he stays on the website for longer, then it's enjoyable, hopefully. Now, from your business perspective, think about this. You're moving from fulfilling a minimum standard, is it accessible, to do my users enjoy using my site and my services? If they enjoy it, you get more usage, more business, more revenue, whatever it is that you get from people staying on your website for longer. So I encourage you to at least look at the concepts of BS 8878. And again, unusually, you can actually download a draft version of the standard for free. So if you want to buy a copy of any of the standards from BSI, you're paying in the order of £50 to hundreds of pounds. This one's available for free, providing you get the pre-release, the draft version of it, which happens to be pretty close to the final standard. How many of you know what a plumb line is? Quite a few of you know what a plumb line is. So for those that don't, if we look at this wall, is this wall straight? So a plumb line is a piece of string with a weight on it, and you hold it up against the wall or the thing you want to measure, and it will tell you whether it's out of line or not. So if it's out of line, there's a problem, and you have to rebuild the wall or whatever it is, particularly if you're building a new wall. So what I'm going to encourage you to do then is, you've all told me that accessibility is important to you. You all put up your hands. So I'm going to say, if you live with congruity, then if I put a plumb line up against the work you're doing in the next 168 hours, I'd hope to see some alignment between what you say is important and what you actually do. So my offer now is, you're familiar with this concept of phone a friend? You know, and these TV quiz things that I don't pay much attention to. So phone a friend. So my offer to you is, if you're serious about working on accessibility, whatever organization you're in, as long as you're not in gambling, I personally don't like that too much, but I'll actually work with you, and I'll spend some of my time working with you for free. So if it helps you, I'll come and spend a day or two with you, and we can do something together. Because I care enough to invest my time with you, and I'd say that in this year I can give about 5 days of this for free. So if there's more of you that ask me, then we can book things next year as well. But I'm very happy to help you, to get you beyond the obstacles that might otherwise stop you from doing this. Oh, I don't actually know how to set the tools. I'll come and help you. Oh, I don't actually know what the problems are in our system. I'll come and help you. Oh, well, I'd like to talk to our people, but I'm frightened about talking to them. I'll come and help you. So that's my offer to you. The other thing is to find other people. I'm only one person, so find people who know a little bit more about the subject. We've already had a couple of speakers here, and get them involved. So perhaps they'll offer an hour of their time or a phone call. The other thing is to consider the question of, do I personally want or need the skills and understanding, or do I simply want the job done? If you've ever had building work done at home, sometimes you care passionately about how the walls are built and the insulation. Other times you just say, just get it done. You know, I'll pay you to finish the job. So in terms of accessibility, some of you will be thinking, I deeply care about WCAG, and I care about ARIA, and I want to know how to measure it and check it and assess it. Brilliant. You're kind of the people who understand the internals, the nitty-gritty. Other people say, I just want our site to work for these people, fix it. So I'm with both of you, but think about which one you are and whether you'd like help in terms of understanding things. So I'm going to summarize then by saying, what I encourage you to do is change your perspective and the perspective of others that you work with. Move beyond this legal stuff, because I don't think that's going to help us. Try to understand where the benefits are of actually fixing accessibility, if it's worth fixing. I personally think it is, but you've got to make your own minds up. And ask what you can do today, in the next 24 hours, in the next 168 hours, to make a positive difference.